everyone. I'm Shay Connolly, Executive Editor for Branded Content at GovExec, and I'm happy to welcome you to Battling Bots, Advanced Security Measures for Public Sector IT, sponsored by Human Security. With government services more digital than ever, bot attacks have become a serious threat to public systems and trust. Today, we're going to explore how agencies can stay ahead by blocking bots, safeguarding access, and keeping essential services secure. We'll hear real-world insights and strategies that can help agencies strengthen their defenses without compromising usability. Joining me here today is Frank Walsh, Field Chief Technology Officer at Human Security. Frank, thanks for being here today, and let's just dive right in. So to start with, could you please share a bit about your background and your current role at Human, and how does your work intersect with bot defense and public sector cybersecurity?
Thanks, Shay. Happy to be here. Yeah, I've been with Human now approaching 5 years. I've focused as field CTO on ensuring our customers are armed with both the latest technology and strongest level of awareness tied to bot threats that are reaching and targeting their platforms. My background, I actually built software for about half my career. A decade writing large web application and mobile application software, and then transitioned into cybersecurity with a company named Tanium, Malwarebytes, and Versec, and now here at Human, like I shared, for about 5 years. I think what we're seeing is a world where more and more of the traffic that makes up the internet is automation or is some non-human form of traffic. We used to measure the amount of traffic as more than half. Now with agentic AI and with the advantages that artificial intelligence offers individuals who really want to learn to code or want to learn to use automation to access or maliciously control a website. We're seeing more and more of the internet's traffic as automated, and so this is really leading to a number of scenarios where not all that automation is good. There's a lot of that automation that we're seeing that is actually malicious or abusive, and in some cases the abuse really has a outcome in mind. In other cases, it's just someone who wants to skip a line or wants to get an advantage against other site visitors or consumers. So it's really become the Wild West, I'd say, of internet over the last few years as automation and bot traffic grows.
Frank, from your perspective, you just outlined, there are wide-ranging possibilities for malicious activity. But what are some of the most common bot attack techniques that target government services today, and how are they evolving?
I mean, essentially any interface that allows someone to create an account or log into an account is targeted thousands of times a day by account takeover attempts, credential cracking, credential stuffing, right? Scenarios where credentials are being pushed into those interfaces to see if access can be gained, and then inventory can be taken of what's available to steal or what's available to abuse behind a login interface. If you're offering opportunity for accounts to be created, we're certainly seeing a number of scenarios where attackers or abusers are creating accounts. In many cases, they don't even know what they plan to do with those accounts. They're creating them to sell them in a criminal underground. Maybe they'll sell them today. Maybe they'll sell them in 2 years when you add a bunch of features to your platform. But essentially, what we're seeing are threat actors find ways to gain access to platform interfaces that are password protected, or should be protected by some form of authentication. That's one of the primary abuse scenarios we're seeing, targeting government agencies or any form of login interface that's used by a government agency. And then we're also seeing a tremendous amount of content scraping, right? Like data is the new oil was an expression that people used for many years, and data has become even more and more valuable as this data becomes a tool in attack scenarios, right? If I'm going to create a bunch of fake accounts. I need it's certainly better if I'm creating those accounts with a bunch of real people's information, right? That's certainly better. And secondly, it's really very powerful for people to gather information and then even sell that information. So I'd say account takeover, fake account creation, and content scraping or data scraping are three of the biggest scenarios facing government agencies today.
Yes, and of course, for the public sector, they handle so much sensitive data about citizens that the stakes really can't be higher. So could
Absolutely.
you kind of illustrate some of what you've been talking about by sharing a real world example where your approach helped a public sector client mitigate some of these threats we've been talking about?
Yeah, certainly. I could think of there's even a attack scenario that I haven't really spoken of yet that I'll talk about regarding one of our public sector customers. Uh, certainly advertising is a big part of the internet. That's essentially how a large portion of the internet is paid for. And we have a government customer that had been advertising some constituent services and what we found was that as they advertised or looked to monetize interfaces that constituents used, uh, bad actors looked at that as opportunity. They looked at the interfaces that were being presented as places that they could potentially find and victimize constituents, right? They looked at ways in which they could deliver malware through advertisements. And also, we saw scenarios unfold where threat actors were attempting to falsify clicks to essentially steal from advertising campaigns. And so, this is another scenario on top of the data scraping scenarios I've described and login interface scenarios where we're seeing threat actors try and break into interfaces. Essentially, what we have is a world where people are kind of out fishing for information and for services that they can use and abuse at scale. And as they use and abuse those interfaces, they find clever new ways to think about new forms of abuse. So the scenario in mind that I'm describing led, without the power of humans technology, would have led to scenarios where threat actors were extracting millions of dollars in revenue from a platform, and a human was able to differentiate for that customer between human traffic and artificial or bot traffic, essentially. So I think people really need to start thinking too about their definition of bot or what a bot is. We used to think of bots as kind of these infected devices, or we used to think of bots as kind of these networks of computers set up by really sophisticated threat actors. But in today's world, with tools like ChatGPT and Claude, a bot is something as simple as an individual who basically opened up Chrome Dev Console and copied a URL path and format of a request with copy as curl and pasted it into one of these artificial intelligence systems and said, "Hey, make me a script that does this over and over. Make me a script that pushes exploit payloads into each and every interface that's in this curl command." So there's a lot of scenarios that are unfolding where essentially the life cycle of an attack is shrinking dramatically, right? We used to require a threat actor had to perform reconnaissance. Reconnaissance could take minutes, hours, days. After reconnaissance, they'd have to inventory what they found and then craft exploit payloads and push those into interfaces or build tooling to kind of expedite the activities they wanted to perform against the platform. Nowadays, it's as simple as them opening their browser, visiting a site, going into Chrome Dev Console, extracting what's called a HAR file, which is basically like a network log, sending it over to ChatGPT or Claude and saying, "Hey, listen, can you extract the patterns that I, performed as a user and build me a script that does that?" That's now a bot. And that bot is then available for threat actors to use and abuse any platform.
Sounds like we need to expand our expectations and what we think of as, bots and the attacks that they can render.
Essentially anything that a human would do or could do, a threat actor can perform using a bot. And the advantages are certainly it's bots are faster than humans. They're not typing or moving a mouse. They're certainly able to scale, attacks against every input on every interface concurrently, right? We can't do that if we're a human. Limited to how many tabs I could open and track and my computer can handle. Um, and certainly, finally, doing it this way and distributing these attacks across hundreds, if not thousands of devices leads to a very difficult attribution process, right? Like we can't necessarily say, hey, it's this one account if they're attacking or abusing a platform across hundreds of accounts, right? And so that distribution of the attack across devices, accounts, IPs, that leads to scenarios where it's really hard to pick out an attack from the noise of legitimate, visitors traffic. So I really like to say certainly speed, scale, and stealth are three advantages offered to individuals who use bots to do their bidding. And then I really would add a fourth to that. Certainly, we've seen bots essentially scripted by these artificial intelligence technologies. So essentially, we're in a world now where they don't even have to do a whole lot of hard work to get that speed, scale, and stealth. They now ask a LLM to shortcut the process and get them right to the conclusion.
You're really underscoring how when we look at new technologies, new AI capabilities, as long as they're making things easier for government and easier for us, they're also making things easier for potential attackers. So it's a lot of, push and pull there.
Yeah, it's an interesting world. I mean, I think humanity's faced this a number of times. I mean, I'm sure there was a guy out there when the telephone was invented saying this is going to ruin everything. We can't do our telegrams or nobody's going to meet face to face anymore, because we're all going to talk on the phone. So, there's the good and the bad. It's a double-edged sword. There's certainly a lot of advantages that are offered using these technologies to kind of improve our lives and to allow us to focus on harder or more interesting or exciting things. But it comes with the other side of that sword, which is really these same tools could be put to use for threat actors by threat actors.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, in the wake of a potentially successful attack that you've described, what is a good way they can sort of bolster their resilience to shore
Yeah.
up their defenses?
So I think it really comes down to this. I mean, certainly you need to be able to differentiate between, and this is what really excited me about our vision here at Human, has kept me here at Human. We were actually profiled in Times 100 most influential companies a year or two ago. And the front cover was Sam Altman from ChatGPT, and inside we were listed as one of these companies that is changing the world. And really, for me, that says it all. I mean, I think that we're headed to a world where will struggle to differentiate a artificial intelligence system from your mom on the phone, right? So like I think we're in a world now where being able to differentiate human traffic or that the traffic that originates from a human being from traffic that originates from some other form of artificial intelligence or bot or tooling like a script is more and more and more critical. And every single day, it becomes more and more important that a organization that's offering services on the web or a government agency offering services on the web can make that determination. So you can't think about bot defense like fly swatter or like a radio button in your WAF that you need to turn on and bots will be taken care of. The new battleground we face is this battleground of AI and bot automation or expedited traffic. when held up against human traffic. And the ability to clearly differentiate that artificial intelligence from real human traffic is going to become more and more important. So it's really critical that as agencies or government entities think about this problem, they really employ a independent best of breed strategy to understand these technologies and how they're using their services, right? So certainly technologies like human that really give you a clear picture, differentiating human traffic from non-human traffic, abusive traffic from legitimate or good traffic that's reaching their platforms. That's super, super critical to have visibility into. And then as we think about how you react to this traffic, sometimes blocking it kind of tips your hand. It shares, with the threat actor that they failed, and the shorter their feedback loop, the quicker their iteration, right? The quicker they adapt or adjust to try and find a new way in. So it's a bit of a game of cat and mouse. And the more, times the cat catches the mouse, the next mouse is a little more clever, is a little more crafty in the techniques they use. And so beyond having visibility that kind of differentiates human from non-human traffic, it's important to think about advanced strategies that don't necessarily tip our hand to a threat actor, as clearly or as openly, right? These are strategies like tar pitting requests, shadow banning features in a platform, flagging transactions for human review before releasing them, variably responding with different, failure reasons. So a threat actor can't really circle in on what failed or when it failed or how it failed. So there's a number of strategies that human helps our customers think about to try and identify how they're going to react to abuse and how they're going to keep the advantage in this game of cat and mouse, how they're going to, sustain a defense that isn't basically, that doesn't lead to a threat actor just pushing more abuse at your platform. Really, the goal is abandonment. You want a threat actor to abandon their attack. You don't want them to adapt instead of abandonment. And it's critical beyond visibility that organizations design strategies that lead to abandonment, that don't just cause more abuse or adaptation on that abuse.
Let's say you have a government agency who comes to you and they say, we do want to develop a longer term strategy, but are there things that we can be doing right now, more sort of quick wins that we can implement to initiate better defense right now? What advice would you give them?
Certainly, I think, beyond adopting best of breed technology like human, and this is hard. It shouldn't be hard. It's been around a long time, but enforcing or forcing MFA on all login interfaces. This is a really critical security control that ensures it's not foolproof, but it ensures that the bar is meaningfully higher for a threat actor who's trying to abuse a login interface. Certainly developing strategies that kind of relate the cyber defense practices to fraud practices or fraud defense practices or strategies, right? Like we've seen a number of customers who like have a strong cyber practice where they're blocking it at the request level, but aren't necessarily relating that to the way they're evaluating and defending from fraud on transaction interfaces, right? And so a threat actor, will first try and hammer an interface with hundreds, if not thousands of requests. But if the cyber defense solution starts to get in the way of that, they'll slow it down. They'll distribute the requests across many interfaces to try and achieve the same outcome without running into the cyber control. And then the onus is on the fraud controls that sit behind the cyber controls or side by side with them to really identify whether or not, the transaction should be trusted, not the transmission, right? And so this is really important that fraud and cyber teams are working together, are triaging and relating the abuse that they each defend or identify, and seeing if maybe those abusive transactions that were identified by practitioners focused on fraud could be related back to transactions or accounts on the cyber side of the house that could then be flagged or challenged in the process of reaching that state of a transaction. So, certainly that's a really important thing to focus on, is triaging of attacks, relating fraud and cyber practices, and at a control level, absolutely focusing on making sure every interface they can employs MFA.
Great. Well, we are almost at the end of our time here. So just as a final question, do you have any final thoughts you want to share, or maybe look towards the future and let us know what you see kind of coming down the line that you think may have impact in the near future?
Yeah, I'm certainly very, very excited by, like, when we look at these technologies that I described, these AI technologies. There's MCP, is like an interface protocol that is basically being developed by providers to support um, approved agency. And by that, I mean technologies like, Claude or ChatGPT, right, or Gemini, are operating on individuals' behalf. And right now, it's a bit of like the Wild West. Like, the providers receiving these requests from these systems don't have a whole lot of control over how these technologies are using their platforms, or really, even in many cases, they're not even clearly able to differentiate between that human and non-human traffic. We're certainly seeing a lot of work where these providers of these AI technologies are trying to, like, build connectivity and an interface that allows for these platforms to communicate with services in a trusted manner, and in a manner that isn't like that is clearly differentiated from what a human's visitor would look like. I think it's exciting. I think it is where the future is. I think it's going to be a long road to there. We all know, especially in gov, know the kind of challenges associated with legacy hardware and software, and upgrade cycles, and how slow sometimes they are. So I think I'm very excited about those technologies for the new things we're building, and the new services that are offered to constituents. But it doesn't replace the fact that we're still going to have to work with software that was built and isn't being refreshed for a good number of years, right? So I think it's important to keep one eye on the future and these technologies that can be embedded into new apps to differentiate between this human and non-human traffic, but at the same time, ensure you have controls that will support those legacy apps that aren't in renewal life cycles.
That's all the time we have today. Frank, thank you so much for joining us, and a big thank you to Human Security and to our viewers. This program will be available on demand to rewatch or to share with colleagues who may have missed it. For GovExec, I'm Shay Connolly. Thank you for watching.